38 Special versus 44 Special Cor-Bon DPX. So our 38 Special is a 38 Special+P 110 grain DPX rated at 1,050 feet per second. Our 44 Special is a 200 grain DPX rated at 950 feet per second. So DPX are solid copper bullets, which I find to be pretty good performers overall. I'm going to use my 4-inch barrel Smith & Wesson revolvers here, my 4 1/8 inch Smith & Wesson 686 to test the 38+P, and my 4 1/4 inch Smith & Wesson Model 69 to test the 44 Special. So I'm going to go through the chronograph, see what kind of velocity and accuracy I get at the same time. Then I'm going to do my 10% clear ballistic gel test. So I'm going to go into plain 10% clear ballistics to see what the best potential of those cartridges are. No fabric in the way that could potentially clog a hollow point, no rib simulation that can slow down penetration, and see what we get for our best possible potential for expansion and penetration. Then I'm going to move on to doing more of a real world simulation where I'm going to do 4 layers of sweatshirt material on this first 3-inch piece that represents hitting a pectoral muscle, followed by a 1/4 inch medium density fiberboard that represents hitting ribs or sternum, 16 more inches of clear ballistics, then another 1/4 inch MDF at the back to represent hitting back ribs. Clear ballistics is roughly a half representation of the density of flesh, so 3 inches and 16 inches is more like 1.5 inches and 8 inches in a real living target. So we'll do our plain clear ballistics shot, then our real world simulation shot, and see how these rounds do. Then I will shoot at the steel target to see what kind of practical accuracy and shootability I can get with these. So let's get started with this test. All right, first up we have our 38 Special. We are rated at 1,050 feet per second. Let's see how close I get to that 1,050 feet per second on my 4-inch barrel here. (1,087), 1,074, 1,074, 1,069, 1,081. Very consistent velocity, and I kind of expect that with the copper bullet. They're pushed really deep in the case, so sometimes you can get better velocity averages, so and above rated velocity. Our 44 Special, we are rated at 950 feet per second. Let's see how close I get to that. (969), 975, 985, 963, 970. So all of those are a little bit above the rate of velocity, and that's, that's acceptable out of a 4 1/4 inch barrel, because I think, the standard for 44 Special is out of 4-inch barrels. So good velocity overall. So let's hit our ballistics gel block and see how these compare. All right, first up, our plain clear ballistics shot. No fabric in the way that could potentially clog a hollow point and make it fail to expand. No rib simulation that can potentially slow down its penetration. So let's see what we get here with our 38 Special on the plain clear ballistics, 38+P. All right, now let's hit that with our 44 Special. Let's take a look. All right, so I wasn't expecting that. We got some tumbling and non-expansion with our 44 Special. It didn't over-penetrate because that is such a long bullet. A 200 grain being solid copper with a hollow point that big is a pretty long bullet. This is surprising to me. This is very surprising to me. You know what, let me do one more above that and try to confirm that result. All right, let me do one more. Sometimes weird anomalies like this happen. I have a feeling like it might expand this time. One more. Let's go take a look. Oh, well, that's confirmed. No expansion on that. That's a very powerful cartridge, so that is weird that that would not expand like that. In plain clear ballistics, it's very rare that I see that. So that's disappointing and strange. Now our 38 Special, we got only 11.5 inches of penetration, which is kind of low. It's enough in my mind, because if you make a straight on shot, that's enough, but it is kind of low. Now our first 44 special went right to 18 inches. And then our second one went to 17 3/4. So yeah, very disappointing on that 44. I wasn't expecting that. So let's put on our fabric, put in our rib simulations, and see how these compare in our real world simulation. All right, real world simulation, 4 layers of fabric, 4 layers of sweatshirt material, followed by 3 inches of clear ballistics that represents hitting a pectoral muscle, followed by a 1/4 inch medium density fiberboard that represents hitting ribs or sternum, 16 more inches of clear ballistics, and another 1/4 inch MDF at the back. If I keep these bullets within that back rib simulation, I'll say they're okay. They're not really over penetrating, but let's see what we get here with our 38 Special+P. All right, now let's hit that with our 44 special. Let's go take a look. Well, I should have called it like I thought I was going to see. I was going to say I think that the rib simulation might cause some expansion on that 44, but I didn't say anything, and that's kind of what I saw, because the hollow cavity of those bullets is very deep, and the material around that hollow point is very, very thin. So I was thinking if it hits something hard, that might actually break it open, and that's kind of what I'm seeing here with that. So honestly, not bad when you think about that. You know, I did this through the real world simulation. We want to see the expansion through that. So here's our rib simulation. We can actually see that with our 38+P, we had straight on front expansion. With our 44, we're actually still tumbling. So yeah, tumbling through there. So not great performance on that 44 still. With our 38+P, we have spot on at 12 inches of penetration. I know parallax will make that look like it's going a little deeper, but yeah, right at 12 inches from a straight on view with our 38+P. With our 44 special, we got 13.5 inches. So, you know, penetration wise, these are all fine, except the 38's a little bit shallow, but the 44s are all fine. Some expansion on the real world simulation, none on the plain gel. I'm going to say it's not bad, but it's not what you would think you would get with the power level we were working with. You know, we had plenty of power that this should have expanded. And, you know, the 38's a little shallow. So not the worst performance I've seen. You know, on a technical note, I'm going to say I think the 38 did a little bit better, because even though it was shallow, in our real world simulation, we got expansion and 12 inches of penetration. As where, you know, our 44, it doesn't look as good of an expansion. It's just kind of partial pedal expansion. So let's pull these out of the block. We'll take a close-up look at them. Then I'm going to shoot our steel and see what kind of practical accuracy and shootability I can get with these. All right, so here's a close-up look at these bullets going through plain gel, our 38 Special+P and our 44 specials. Those are some really long bullets, being solid copper, so they're less dense. Plus, they have a huge hollow cavity, which makes them even longer. So our 38 special, we got really fantastic expansion. Really good performance overall with that plain gel shot. Now this is disappointing. Our 44 specials, no expansion at all with either of these. Now when we look at the ones going through our rib simulation, things change up just a little bit here. 38+P and our 44. So our 38+P, this did typical DPX things, where it peeled the pedals back a little bit after going through that rib simulation. That's very common. And because I did that and I got the 12 inches, you know, that's not bad performance overall. Now this penetrated a little bit better, but obviously that expansion is not very consistent. So I think partly what's going on is this bullet is just a little bit too heavy. I honestly think if this was like a 180 grain, we would eliminate some of these problems. So, you know, I'm going to give credit where credit is due. Cor-Bon did load these things. They don't make the actual projectiles. They loaded these things to over what they have a rated velocity, and that's relatively powerful, especially with the 44. The 44 is a really powerful loading, which most companies nowadays will load that thing at half the energy that we got with this. So I'm not faulting Cor-Bon for the way they loaded these. These are loaded fantastic. It's just that these particular bullets here are just not doing all that well. I would like to see that loading. Maybe a slightly different bullet coming to about the same, you know, power level. That would be really good. Or maybe a different bullet that might actually expand. I know it's a tricky process, but yeah, I think that there's potential with this. And this one did okay. So that's a close-up look at those bullets. All right, 14 yards from the target. So I'm just going to get a front sight picture and pop these off as fast as I think I can hit the target, just to kind of see what kind of practical shootability these things give for me. So 38 Special plus P, 14 yards. Huh. I missed a couple, which is weird. Well, I can say is out of that gun, the recoil was super, super, super low. And I think maybe it's just these gloves and I'm trying to fire them off too fast that I missed them. But shootability, I mean, it felt like shooting a lead round nose 38 out of a gun this size. So it wasn't bad. 44 Special. Let's see how this thing does for me. Lately I've been having these troubles with these different ammo companies. And people say it's my gun, but hey, I'm testing Federal all the time. I never see it from Federal. So, and a lot of times what happens is these ammo companies, you know, I can't say this for sure, but a lot of times they'll use different primers that are maybe hard, but I got a nice strike on that though. Very hard dimple on that. So it's not a hard primer. Let me try it single action. One more try. I went for a headshot and missed that. I got a couple more rounds in here. So they shoot pretty good. Now I'm gonna say recoil-wise, there's actually like double the recoil in this gun versus this one. Now to be fair, I think that my 686 weighs an ounce or two more than this Model 69, even though they're both L frames because the, you know, the bottom of that barrel there. But yeah, there's so much less recoil with that 38 than the 44. That being said, the 44 doesn't really recoil any more than a 45 ACP of a typical pistol. So, you know, not bad overall. Let me back it up and see how these shoot from some more distance. All right, 75 yards from the target just for fun and just to kind of see how these things will impact at some distance, and this gives me a challenge. I find this kind of fun. So let's see how I can do with our 38 plus P from 75 yards. I don't know where they're going. I aimed kind of center and then I aimed high, so let me aim a little low. Huh. I can't tell where they're hitting on that steel, but that's one of those things like up close. And now here, I don't really have an explanation for it. You know, I'm not the best shooter in the world, but you know, I was aiming in the same spot, like center, miss, aimed high, missed, aimed low, missed. Then I went back to aiming center, and then I hit those last three. So I don't know. 44 Special. Let's see what this does. So I missed that last one, but I'm going to say this one was a little bit more accurate. So, you know, this is one of those things I don't like when this happens, where it's like one ammo has one great attribute, the other ammo has another great attribute, but they both can't have the two things you want. And the two things you want is shootability, accuracy, and good terminal performance. So terminal performance wise, I think our 38 Special plus P did a little bit better. Now I know a lot of people are gonna be like, well, that didn't penetrate very far, but these are solid copper rounds that are really meant to open up and not penetrate super far. That's really kind of their design. even though they're called DPX, deep penetrating expanding. Solid copper really, they open up so large that you rarely see deep penetration on something like that unless it's like maybe in a magnum loading. So really, this is what I expected to see. I always see that with solid copper rounds. So I would say for our terminal ballistics, our 38 did a little bit better, and the recoil was super low, but at least for me, the accuracy was a little off. But we can kind of chalk that up to maybe it's just me. And at combat distances, none of that's gonna matter. So I'm gonna say our 38 is pretty good because we did hit 12 inches through our rib simulation. Now our 44, very accurate round, but no expansion. That being said, a 44 caliber bullet, especially one tumbling, actually probably would have created more damage in our living target than this expanded 38. But you can't count on that every time. You know, that's why rounds meant to tumble, you really can't count on those as being consistent every time. So, you know, both of these are somewhat mediocre, but I can't really say if one's better than the other. Both had good attributes and both had bad attributes. So tell me what you guys think. So that's what you get today. So as always, comment, share, and like. And thanks for watching.